Hi, I'm Adam.
And I'm Dawn with Finding Self-Reliance.
And today we're going to build this retaining wall. We're going to be putting another building right here pretty soon, but we need to build a retaining wall to prevent erosion. We're going to be using railroad ties to make the retaining wall, but before we get started laying down railroad ties, we need to remove a lot of dirt so we get a vertical wall to start with.
Ah! There's a lizard right there.
After digging out where the front of the wall is going to go, we also had to dig a little to make the wall go around the sides. We also had to dig out a space for a deadhead. This is a piece that's going to go perpendicular to the rest of the wall, with another piece on the end forming a T to help anchor the wall in place. After all of the digging was done, we had to cut some of the railroad ties to use as vertical posts to help support the retaining wall. All we had was this little 10-inch chainsaw, but it actually did a pretty good job cutting through such thick timber. That is, until the chain of the chainsaw was damaged. These railroad ties have a lot of rocks embedded in them, and my guess is that the chain hit a rock and broke off some of the teeth. Finding a replacement chain for this particular brand of chainsaw wasn't easy, so we went ahead and bought a new chainsaw. Before we can put the posts in the ground, of course, we have to dig some post holes, and to do that, we're going to be using an auger. Using an auger certainly makes digging post holes a lot easier. Unfortunately, we had an 8-inch auger bit, but these railroad ties are 7 inches by 9 inches. Because the railroad ties are bigger than the holes we're digging, we had to do some additional digging with shovels, and we had to break away dirt with this iron bar. Once we finally finished digging the hole, we added some gravel, packed it down, and then inserted the post. After digging a couple of post holes this way, we decided that it was far too labor-intensive and time-consuming. So, we bought a larger 10-inch auger bit. This would make things much easier. Here we're going to dig 2 post holes, one for the front wall and one for the side wall. And things were a lot faster and easier with the larger auger bit. We still had to remove some of the loose dirt with hand tools, but we didn't have to break away the sides of the hole to make the hole larger. Once all of the posts were in, we put down some gravel, evened it out, packed it down some, and then put in the first horizontal railroad tie for the bottom row of the wall. We had to move a little gravel around to make sure the piece was perfectly level. After that, it would be ready to be staked into the ground. But before we do that, we're going to get a few more pieces in place. The next piece we were going to put in would be the deadhead. We laid a little gravel down and then set the piece in place. Now we have to dig out a space for a cross member. This will help anchor the center of the wall into the ground. To connect the 2 pieces together, we'll be using a half-lap joint. The 2 railroad ties are the same thickness. If we remove half of the material from each piece, at the point where they're going to come together, they will fit nice and snug. Of course, we had to anchor the railroad ties into the ground, so we needed to drill some holes so that we could hammer some rebar in. If we tried to drill more than just an inch or 2 at a time, the drill bit will get stuck. So we had to just drill a very small amount, pull the drill back out, and repeat until making it all the way through the railroad ties. Next, we had to cut some rebar to the size we needed, and the best tool I have for cutting rebar is an angle grinder. Then we just need to anchor these pieces in place by hammering the rebar into the ground. The final step for the deadhead was to add some gravel and then backfill with dirt. Next, we laid down another railroad tie, drilled some more holes, and hammered in some more rebar. The rest of the process was just more of the same. Cut some railroad ties to size, drill some holes, cut some rebar, stake it in place. Rinse and repeat. All that's left to do now is to backfill the wall and to lop off the top of these posts so they're more even. They're all sticking up at different heights right now, so we'll cut those off, backfill the wall, and that'll be it. I'm seeing sparks with the chainsaw when I cut in this corner. I'm not sure what I'm hitting, but I don't want to ruin the chainsaw blade, so I'm going to whack this with a sledgehammer and try to break it off, and I'll try to clean it up afterwards. Actually, was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I did come back later with an angle grinder and a wood carving disc to even out the tops of these posts even more. And that pretty much did it. The retaining wall was complete.